vision of the psalm. The Lord is my light and my salvation. The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall we be afraid? When the wicked, even our enemies and our foes, came upon us to eat up our flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host should encamp against us, our hearts shall not fear. Though war should rise against us, in this we will be confident. One thing have we desired of the Lord, that will we seek after, that we may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of our life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. The fifth verse, for in the time of trouble, he shall hide us in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide us. He shall set us upon a rock. Let us pray. God our Father, we give you thanks this day for the gift of life, for the joy of a new day, knowing that in each new day you promise us new mercies. We bring our country before you, knowing that unless you keep us, we will surely fall. But when you, O God, keep us, we shall surely stand. Father, we are in a place and time in our country when we call upon you to stretch down your strong right hand from heaven one more time and touch this little nation. God, you have brought us from a fishing village and raised us into a mini metropolis, not because of the work of the hands of man, but because you have had mercy and favor upon us. Continue to let your light shine upon these islands of the Bahamas. Continue to let your light shine upon our people. We ask you for continued grace. We ask you for mercy. We ask you for favor that can only come from upon high. And so, Lord, as we deliberate in this place today, we ask that your spirit of mercy be with us, that we do all that we do in the interest of your people in decency and in order. God, we ask that you strengthen us, that you give us courage to do those things that are right and pleasing in your sight. And Lord, for all these things we ask, we should be careful to give you the honor, the thanks, and the glory. In Jesus' name. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done
on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread.
And forgive us our trespasses,
as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. Honorable members, when the business of this House suspended, the honorable member for Central Grand Bahama had reserved the floor for the honorable member for Garden Hills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Garden Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed my honor as the minister with responsibility for the public service and national insurance to present my contribution on the mid-year budget debate. Let me begin, Mr. Speaker, by thanking the Almighty God for allowing me the privilege to be a member of this honorable House by way of the great people in the Garden Hills constituency who elected me to serve on their behalf. I salute them, Mr. Speaker, and take pride in fulfilling my duties to work for them, to be there when I'm needed. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to thank the most honorable Prime Minister who's entrusted me with the responsibility for the management and the development of more than 20,000 public offices in the public service and national insurance. Before I begin my direct commentary, Mr. Speaker, I just would wish to make one comment that my colleague yesterday spoke about at length. Mr. Speaker, I never thought that I would see a day. Never thought in my wildest dreams, Mr. Speaker, that I would see a day when the daughter of Sir Lyndon Pinley would be denied in nomination for a seat in the PLP. I never thought, Mr. Speaker, that the PLP would ever get to a point where they say publicly, as said by the daughter of Sir Lyndon, that they had to separate, create some separation between themselves and the Pinley. Mr. Speaker, we all know about the history of Sir Lyndon. In fact, all my life, Mr. Speaker, all my life, the PLP has been shouting up on the mountaintop for the works of Sir Lyndon, his greatness, and his achievement, and how he led the Bahamian people all these many years. However, just a few short years after he passed, Mr. Speaker, this new PLP, this new PLP has taken the position that the Pinley should be no more. Mr. Speaker, with that in mind, I would wish that the Bahamian people would take note of this, particularly those senior PLP members who continue to say and continue to show that what Sir Lyndon meant to them, and to see this party, this new PLP, does not want to be a part of them. What is even more unthinkable, Mr. Speaker, perhaps even remarkable, Mr. Speaker, that this new PLP is hesitating to nominate the daughter of another founder of the PLP. We all know of the former Governor General, the distinguished representative when I was growing up for Camp Road, whose mission was only one thing. He would end his deliberations by saying that it is his goal that every tear will be wiped from every eye of every Bahamian. And yet today, Mr. Speaker, some short years later, the word has not yet come down that yes, he's still alive, able to listen, waiting for the word to come down that his daughter will be nominated in Angliston.
He's waiting for the word on high?
He's waiting for the word. They're not here today. I believe, Mr. Speaker, I believe, Mr. Speaker, that these are new days when the daughters of two of the strongest leaders in Bahamian history are struggling to be nominated. And they are struggling in the PLP, in the new PLP. Mr. Speaker, but this new PLP has gone further. They have also declared that one of their strongest supporters in this House will not get the nomination. Mr. Speaker, I know of no person in this place who's been the voice of the PLP, who supported the leadership of the PLP, that was stronger than South Andros. No one, Mr. Speaker. And yet, according to the PLP, his work is done. Mr. Speaker, this is what the PLP is about. This is what they've come to. And so I asked the ordinary Bahamians who have been dedicated and loyal to the PLP to look at what they have done and to pay them for how they've treated you as PLPs. Mr. Speaker, I don't intend to get in the politics of the PLP. I wish to focus, Mr. Speaker, on the success, the hard work, determination of the Free National Movement. The Most Honorable Prime Minister and his financial team recently rolled out a financial plan for the restoration of the Bahamas so that we can build back even better the Bahamas. I applaud this vision. In this regard, and in keeping with his vision and his mandate, the Ministry of the Public Service and National Insurance will continue to respond to the needs of the Bahamian people. As mentioned earlier this year, this government will not compromise public health and safety. Therefore, health and safety committees were established in ministries and departments to ensure that the health and safety protocols were implemented and maintained. A return to work guideline provided additional information to guide senior managers during this time. I am so proud, Mr. Speaker, of the carefully considered and humanitarian decisions taken by this government not to contribute to any further unemployment of Bahamians during COVID-19. Therefore, there were no layoffs, no public officer was furloughed or terminated during this pandemic. Think about it, Mr. Speaker. 22,000 Bahamians, 22,000 public officers got every single cent, was paid all of their monies during this pandemic. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, jobs were created. In healthcare and national security, for example. COVID-19 ambassadors were hired in the Ministry of National Security, and a contact tracing unit was established with additional technical experts in the Ministry of Health. This government made a commitment not to let its citizens go hungry. Therefore, during COVID-19, the government funded unemployment assistance program and provided financial support for self-employed persons and unemployed persons eligible for the benefit through the National Insurance Board. I will come back to the government-funded program when I speak specifically about national insurance. Mr. Speaker, much has happened since the administration came to office in 2017. Hurricane Dorian severely crippled our second and third largest local economies, and we are still suffering the effects of the COVID-19 global pandemic. With this in mind, our focus has been and will always be maximizing our efficiency, productivity, and service delivery, particularly during this period when our Bahamian brothers and sisters need us the most. As we stand on the foundation of this administration's past accomplishments, Mr. Speaker, we will press towards the mark of meeting the needs of our people at the highest of standards. Today, I will highlight many successes that my ministry has achieved and detail several of the challenges that we have been forced to overcome. Mr. Speaker, clearly COVID-19 directly affected the over 20,000 public officers. I take this opportunity to convey our thanks to the dedicated staff on the front line and frontline workers in the public service. Special recognition and thanks must go to our essential workers, top-level managers and financial personnel who never stopped working throughout this entire pandemic. In accordance with the competent authority plan for a phased reopening of the country, strict safety measures were employed, such as a shift system and a work-from-home option, to allow for the safe return of public officers to their respective ministries, agencies, and departments. I'd also like to thank our hardworking healthcare professionals who conducted through contact tracing exercises, whether there was a potential COVID-19 exposure or not. For the hardworking, their cooperation, and strict adherence to the health protocols, the different agencies of the public service served as a model for the successful reopening of the country's local economy. Safety was and is the first and foremost concentration of this administration and of the Ministry of Public Service and National Insurance. By extension, since safety was the first and most critical component engaged by this ministry over the last year. But secondly, our fiscal responsibility was very close during and to ensure our subsequent economic downturn. With this in mind, Mr. Speaker, the following was agreed. One, that there would be a hiring freeze except in exceptional circumstances. Two, all recommendations proposed within the 2021, all recommendation process within the 20 to 21 budget period will be paid during the next budget period. Three, payment of all public service promotions, confirmations, increments, and reclassifications would be deferred until the next budget period later on this year. As a result of these policies, Mr. Speaker, the acting financial secretary and his team at the Ministry of Finance were able to not only save public service jobs, but also to prevent salary reductions during the entire pandemic. This is no small accomplishment. As public officers continue to make a tremendous contribution to our local economies during these difficult times. With this backdrop of safety and financial prudence, I will now report on the performance of the Ministry of Public Service and National Insurance. The Ministry of Public Service, along with the hardworking, supportive staff at the ministry and the Public Service Commission, continue to operate remotely and in office during the entire pandemic. Total expenditure, as outlined in the Ministry of Public Service budget, head number 5, were processed and paid from the following items. And I would just like to throw some numbers at you, but these numbers represent the reality of what the government and the Ministry of Public Service have been doing. From our global provisions, some $1.8 million was spent in new appointments. Some $21 million was spent for office rent. $16 million in lease agreements, $532,000 in NIB maintaining its offices in the public service. $17.2 million was paid out in gratuities, $77 million in pensions, $647,000 of pensions to officials, and $44 million, or $44.7 million, were paid out in insurance premiums during this period. Mr. Speaker, when I talk to my colleagues and I talk to residents of Garden Hills and they hear those numbers, they sometimes say to me, they're just numbers. What I was suggesting to you, Mr. Speaker, with these numbers, these numbers represent the reality of what was taking place during this pandemic. Mr. Speaker, Booker T. Washington quoted once, "You measure the size of the accomplishment by the obstacles you have to overcome to reach your goals." If this or that is how you measure your accomplishment, the public service, the Ministry of Public Service must say that during this period, we were very, very successful. We've been dedicated to and continue to processing, planning, and executing within our ministry. Acknowledging our accomplishments are more than a necessity. It is required for the growth and the change that we must come about. This ministry has generated ideas for projects to be carried out strategically throughout the remainder of this budget year. The introduction of click meetings, a video conferencing software for virtual town meetings. The introduction and integration of human resource management information system, automated human resource functions, the human resource career path, and the continuation of the National Job Creation and Skills Enhancement Program will continue. Mr. Speaker, just let me speak briefly about the creation of a career path for public officers in the Ministry of the Public Service and National Insurance. It has been the view, Mr. Speaker, for many years now, that just like there's a career path in the Ministry of Finance for financial officers, so that they can be promoted and do their work and not have to worry about having to get into different programs. Ministry of Public Service holds a very strong view, Mr. Speaker, that such a career path is necessary for human resource managers because they manage the public service. And so, Mr. Speaker, we will be pushing very hard, and I believe I have the support of the government, that this will be done. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to say to all of those persons in the human resource departments throughout the various ministries that we will look forward to creating a career path. So you don't have to worry about service-wide promotion. You don't have to worry about being mixed up with everybody else because you're performing a very strategic and necessary function. Mr. Speaker, the introduction of the Click Meeting software, which is brought on by the Public Service Center for Human Resource Development, is for the sole purpose of providing easy access for employees to receive training. Each session can hold up to 100 participants, and well over 1,000 public officers have benefited from these professional development sessions because they are all virtual. These courses offered drastically reduce, courses that are offered drastically reduce the costs associated with hosting a training session and provide health and safety as a paramount and continues as a paramount position and continues to allow us to follow the protocols established by the competent authority. They are held in a single physical location. These online training courses, which were introduced amidst the pandemic, accelerated the Ministry of the Public Service ascension to the digital arena of the 21st century. We are breaking out of the bad habits and aggressively taking steps to bring the public service into the future. A collaboration between the Ministry of Finance and the International Development Bank, or the IDB, has birthed the development of a human resource management information system to increase efficiency within the Ministry of the Public Service and National Insurance, and eventually the public service as large. This project was composed to strengthen the government's capacity to allocate, manage, and monitor human resources throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The long-standing issues which have been causing inefficiencies in the ability of the ministry will be rectified when the Human Resource Information System is introduced. Mr. Speaker, members of the Ministry of the Public Service Human Resource Information System during this project team will work together in the latter months of 2021 to create an innovative way to steer the ministry on an up-to-date path towards an automated human resource management information system. We anticipate, Mr. Speaker, that we will be providing a solution to manage the entire lifespan of each public servant working for the government of the Bahamas. We believe that we will become a one-stop service automated tool, facilitating the government's HR functions and providing an alignment with the financial and other predetermined government systems. The Human Resources Career Path will be considered during the next budget year. It will allow the public officers within the ministry and within the Human Resources Unit to use their skills and to remain the specialists that they will become. Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely proud to announce that we have processed even further. I can now announce that persons on the program who have been performing their jobs in an exceptional way can look forward to this year to move into the permanent and pensionable position. Mr. Speaker, for a long time now, Mr. Speaker, I'll definitely repeat. For a long time, Mr. Speaker, governments have taken the position that we're going to create these programs, temporary programs to create jobs. One such program was created sometime in the 90s. This program was called the 52 Weeks Program during the downturn of our economy, and the government thought it would be good to create some jobs for some individuals. These persons in the 52 Weeks Program, for example, got a minimum wage, notwithstanding their qualification, but that is all they got. Mr. Speaker, roughly there are 600 plus vacancies in the Ministry of the Public Service in any given year. And so we took the position, Mr. Speaker, that we will build back better. And in doing that, Mr. Speaker, we determined that all of those individuals who are on the 52-week program who are performing their duties in an acceptable way will be given an opportunity to have a career in the government, and they will be hired as permanent workers for the government of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, we're going to go further, Mr. Speaker. In collaboration with the Ministry of Education, and my colleague from the Ministry of Education, I know is proud and is going to talk a lot about this, Mr. Speaker. He's going to talk about what we know as the teachers' aides, the persons hired by the boards, school boards, and he's going to talk, Mr. Speaker, about persons hired in the lower levels in his ministry. These persons, Mr. Speaker, again, are not even considered temporary workers. What is remarkable, Mr. Speaker, about this is this, and I said in my presentation, I'm not going to talk politics or be very political during this budget debate. But when the Minister of Education brought to the Cabinet of the Bahamas his paper, and normally the paper was shared with the Ministry of Public Service, and we agreed that he was taking the right step to have individuals in his ministry put in a very different and a better position. I was challenged by one of my colleagues who gave me three names actually. And he said to me, Minister, before you proceed with your paper and before you come to some agreement, I want you to check these three names. So I went back to my office and asked my staff to provide me the files on these three names. Three persons came into the system at the same time. all getting exceptional ACRs on their performance. One was hired, and was hired retroactively, hired in 2013, retroactively to 2008. And I asked, why did this person get hired and the other two did not? How is it possible, Mr. Speaker? Don't blame the public service in this case. Because sometimes in the public service, and most good public officers take instructions from the leadership. And so, Mr. Speaker, what I discovered, Mr. Speaker, what I discovered, Mr. Speaker, and my colleague said he don't know which public offices, where these public offices are to take instruction. Mr. Speaker, that is perhaps. Oh, I'm not gonna go there with you, naughty Lutra. Oh. What I will say, Mr. Speaker, and I continue to say this to my colleagues and everybody else, the establishment is normally guided by the policies engaged by the government. Normally. They take signals from how we do things. And getting back to my situation, Mr. Speaker, before I was so interrupted by my colleagues. Getting back to my position, Mr. Speaker. It is remarkable that three persons engaged on the same date came into work in the same capacity as security officer, or three assigned to different schools. One get confirmed retroactively. The other two did not. And I discovered, and I asked one public officer who said to me, "Minister, we were told that I'm hiring my people." Your colleague, the former Minister of Education, said, "I'm hiring my people. Let them hire their own people." Mr. Speaker, that is a remarkable position. That's a position that was posed by the party that wants to be the government. And their position is that they're only going to take care of, they're only going to be interested in people that are familiar to them. That is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. What? That is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. That is what we are trying to not do in the Ministry of the Public Service. And I submit to you, Mr. Speaker, that I get criticized all the time. I'm sure my colleagues do. When they hear from their constituents who say, "Why y'all can't behave like them? Why y'all can't do this?" They don't worry about rules and regulations. Why are you trying to worry about it? Why are you trying to set up the right procedure only to get the procedure knocked down when they come to office? Why do we have to try to save the economy and slow down on the borrowing when they come back, they just spend and don't worry about it? Mr. Speaker, there's no, you said they spend like drunken sailors. There's no rhyme or reason why, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, we got to come up with something touch the pay now. It's never been coming. And you know, over there.
There's no rhyme or reason why, Mr. Speaker. We have to do this. We have to be compelled to do what is right. We have to do what is right, Mr. Speaker. We've got to make sure that the Bahamian people, that the Bahamian people get the best. And to get the best, Mr. Speaker, we must include all Bahamians. We can't worry about the green Bahamians, the yellow Bahamians, or the red Bahamians.
All Bahamians are one.
They're all Bahamians.
One Bahamas.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of my colleagues. The Minister of Education who's gonna ensure that hundreds of ordinary Bahamians, Bahamians who come in at the very basic level in our ministries, that their position be confirmed. So all of your janitresses, school board employees, teachers' aides, and I'm told, Minister, you're even looking at the librarians. And so, Bahamians everywhere, just get time when the Minister of Education is speaking, because I'm sure, based on the numbers I see, you're talking about making nearly 1,500 persons confirmed in the Ministry of Education. Mr. Speaker, he's already done 400 or 500, Mr. Speaker. 604 according to him already. And Mr. Speaker, the journey continues. And it's not only the Ministry of Education. The Department of Social Services also on the same mission. So also is the Department of Local Government. Mr. Speaker, so that every single Bahamian who is performing at an acceptable level in the service will get an opportunity to be considered as a member of the permanent staff within the ministries. I commend my colleagues for their support, and I commend the government for having this vision to wipe the tears from the eyes of every single working Bahamian who's doing their job. Mr. Speaker, that is how good governments behave. That is what they do. They don't take the position that you did not support me or do not support me, so I'm not gonna make sure that you have a good career. There must be opposition, I always say. I tease my staff all the time. I said we are being driven by performance. We are a performance-based government. Never mind what your colors are. As long as you are a professional on the job site, as long as you're doing the work, we will consider you and give you the same options that we have given to every single Bahamian. And so, Mr. Speaker, moving forward in the Ministry of Public Service, we are looking forward to the senior manager's course for senior public officers that will commence at the University of the Bahamas in April of this year to build capacity at the senior level and to develop a successful succession plan for the ministry. We also established a group insurance unit to make sure that the public service, as we expand and as we grow and as we develop, will make sure that our insurance needs in the public service are met, and that this unit will also do the research that is necessary to make that service better for public officers. We have successfully, Mr. Speaker, promoted scores of individuals in the Customs Department, the Immigration Department, and the Minister of National Security has been on our case about the prisons. He has normally said to me and my colleagues that the prison officers feel that they're left out. I want to assure the Minister with responsibility for national security that we are an all-encompassing public service, and prison corrections officers are not left out. They are promoted. Scores of them have been promoted, Mr. Speaker. But you know our position, Mr. Speaker. Our position is very simple. We'll continue the process. We will continue to promote. But because of the pandemic and because of our financial position, we cannot pay. And public officers understand that, you know. They know that in this budget year, what we had to do. They understand fully that in our next budget, steps will be taken to make sure that they're paid what they owe, what we owe them. So, the scores of prison officers who feel neglected, I can assure you that we have taken care of you. I see the Minister of National Security wants to put even another group there. I was told by one of my staff, who's really preparing me and typing this work, that said to me, Minister, how you could promote immigration, customs, the police, and the defense force, and all these people, what about us? And it struck me, Mr. Speaker, it struck me that others in the public service who work very hard, who do their work daily, it appeared to them that I was only looking out for the persons in uniform, and that poor of them in the public service had to wait. And I said to the staff member, I will challenge the government. I will challenge them because you too deserve to be considered. And I assure you that this caring and humanitarian government will look out for you, and you too, just like everybody else, will be considered for promotion during this budget year. Mr. Speaker, plenty money, but we do a good service. And it was during this period, Mr. Speaker, that public officers everywhere kept the country safe. They continued to work. They did the work. And we've always taken the position that if you do the work, you will get the reward. And so, Mr. Speaker, public officers everywhere are to continue to do the good work. You should continue to keep safe. They should continue to perform and keep the government functional, because their day is coming. They will be rewarded. Mr. Speaker, I just thought I'd briefly comment on unions in the public service. You know, Mr. Speaker, I come from a union background. And I said to one of my colleagues, unions know when to take action. But I asked the unions, and I've spoken to several of them, and they fully understand, Mr. Speaker, that these are tough times. So very shortly, Mr. Speaker, we will begin negotiations with the 7 unions involved, and we will look at the conditions of work, and then subsequent to that, look to see that we are in a position to accommodate payments of salaries to them. But that, Mr. Speaker, is not on the table at this moment. And I'll turn to national insurance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week in this House, I laid a document on the table, which was an audit of a $10 million project through the National Insurance Board. Mr. Speaker, I outlined some critical conclusions about that audit. What was remarkable to me, Mr. Speaker, was the fact that members who should be sitting opposite but are absent from my presentation did not challenge, did not deny, did not defend any of the conclusions by the Auditor General that was subsequently the same conclusion that came to us by our special auditors. Instead, Mr. Speaker, members opposite were concerned or expressed concern over the fact that I had tabled the report. And their question was about the timing of my tabling. Mr. Speaker, just for your information, let me repeat for the Bahamian people the conclusions that were made from that report. And like I said when I laid the document, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people will be the judge. Conclusion number 1. And remember, this was the audit of the special $10 million that was loaned by NIB to the Ministry of Housing. 1, inappropriate payments were identified, totaling $1.119 million of inappropriate payments. $417,000 of payments to contractors for unfinished work. $417,000 were paid to contractors for unperformed work. $118,000 was made in duplicate payments to contractors. $300,000 of unauthorized mobilization was paid to contractors. $283,000 of fund administrative fraud had to be awarded to NIB because of the fraud case. In the fund administrator's costs. What was even more remarkable, Mr. Speaker, totally unacceptable to the Free National Movement, was that the PLP government, arranged for over $5 million of NIB funds to be transferred directly to the accounts of one of their henchmen and political operatives. Well, Mr. Speaker, one of their operatives is a better word. One of their operatives, Mr. Speaker. Could you imagine this, Mr. Speaker? Could you imagine this, Mr. Speaker? That a responsible government who had the option to transfer money to build a house, transfer the money to a private citizen, notwithstanding the fact, Mr. Speaker, that they had the Mortgage Corporation of the Bahamas, which is a government-owned institution that does that work. They didn't want to go to Mortgage Corporation, Mr. Speaker. They could have gone to Corporation Sole, that a minister who had responsibility for building the house. Monies could have been deposited to the minister, Corporation Sole, and the minister could disperse the money. If they didn't want to take that second option, Mr. Speaker, they had the third option. They could have given the monies to the Bank of the Bahamas, a government-owned bank, and allowed the Bank of the Bahamas to disperse the money, just like we use the Bank of the Bahamas to pay off persons engaged in the 52-week program and other programs. But instead, Mr. Speaker, instead of using all of those options that were available to the government, and the government could control and see and use, Mr. Speaker, the PLP government determined that the best way to pay contractors, the best way to use the NIB monies was to give it to one of their supporters and allow them to do the job. I said, Mr. Speaker, it was remarkable that members opposite did not get up in this House and deny that did take place. They did not seek to defend their position or their member, but rather they only wanted to find out why that matter was tabled. And they fully know, Mr. Speaker, that it is my responsibility, just as it is the responsibility of every single minister to table critical documents that impact their ministries and to report to the Bahamian people how monies are spent. Mr. Speaker, they continue, Mr. Speaker, in their ways to try to deflect, try to redirect issues rather than dealing with them. His actions, Mr. Speaker, could be best described by me as despicable and totally unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. Hence, the document was laid. Because that is the way we do governance. That is what we do, Mr. Speaker. We report to the Bahamian people. We report on our activities. We are open and transparent. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, they are somewhat ashamed that that is what is happening in their ministry. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, they didn't know that it will come out this quickly. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, if we were to take the national insurance money, Mr. Speaker, and give it to one of our supporters when we have or had an opportunity to use a bank, to use our own mortgage corporation, to use the minister's corporate zone. Imagine if the Free National Movement had taken such an action, Mr. Speaker. I know one member who's not here today would be thrown out of Parliament. She would raise eternal hell. Mr. Speaker, as far as the National Insurance Board is concerned, we are entering a phase of what we call the new normal. This phase of new normal in the Bahamas today, in fact, is throughout the world. Not a single country, Mr. Speaker, has escaped the pandemic of 2020. While some fared better than others, we were all impacted. This last year has taught us many lessons and brought us many hardships. Bahamians lived through lockdowns, queuing and long lines for basic goods and services. The major disruption of our way of life and a major disruption in our economy. And all this while under the threat of death and serious illnesses from a deadly, invisible enemy, coronavirus. We survived. We survived, Mr. Speaker, through the grace of God and the good leadership of the Free National Movement. But for us, Mr. Speaker, trials started early in August 2019 when Hurricane Dorian decimated Abaco and East Grand Bahama. And subsequent to that, Ragged Island was destroyed by a hurricane. So together, in back-to-back blows, Mr. Speaker, we withstand one devastation after another. And at the core of our survival, Mr. Speaker, standing bold and strong, was the National Insurance Board. Looking back to when the National Insurance Board was instituted more than 40 years ago, I'm certain that those Bahamians who laid the groundwork for this scheme, who did the heavy lifting and made it as successful as it is, had not fathomed the disasters of 2019 and 2020. These are truly once-in-a-lifetime events. I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker, to those Bahamians and the ones who as recently as 2013 saw the need, ones as early as 2007, who saw the need and did more of the heavy lifting to expand the scheme and to include the unemployment benefit for Bahamians who had contributed to the fund and who found themselves unemployed for no reason of their own. Mr. Speaker, we talk about many things about national insurance, and I believe this Free National Movement government did two remarkable, surely two exceptionally great things with national insurance. and we will do some more, Mr. Speaker. One is the Unemployment Assistance Program that was founded by the Free National Movement government. And second is the National Drug Plan. So here we are, Mr. Speaker, as a government thinking about what are we going to do with our people once they become unemployed through no reason of their own. The government, the Free National Government said, yes, this is what we can do. We'll create a fund called Unemployment Assistance and make that available to persons who become unemployed. And then, Mr. Speaker, the caring and compassionate government that we are, we then said, what if you're sick and you can't pay for your medicine and you're old or you're very young? Thus, we created the medical plan, headed at the time by the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I congratulate you on behalf of the thousands of ordinary Bahamians who, when they get sick or need their medicine, for the diabetes and other things, you have to push down in their pocket. Just go to the pharmacy with your card. Get the medicine you need. That is an indication of how caring this government is. I'm proud to announce to the Bahamian people that NIB withstood the greatest test in its history so far, and it is still standing today. But, Mr. Speaker, we must be in a position to withstand the next big disaster. We don't know where it will come from or what it would be. But we know that it is coming and we must be ready. We must ensure that NIB is able to make benefit payments and keep the country going until the storm or disaster pass. When these disasters strike and deal devastating blows to the Bahamian economy, for us to survive, NIB must be strong. NIB strives to work for Bahamians when they cannot work for themselves. Mr. Speaker, I know that some people will say, NIB did not pay me any money. I did not claim. Mr. Speaker, in my lifetime, I've made one claim from NIB. I believe I was contributing since its inception. But that's not important, Mr. Speaker. That's why it's a pool. That's why you're helping others. That's one of the foundations of the NIB scheme. And so when people say, NIB didn't pay me anything because I did not claim, that may be true. But more than $104 million in unemployment benefit was paid out by NIB for Hurricane Dorian and COVID-19. Think about that, Mr. Speaker. Two events that no one could plan for. And NIB, because of its foundation, had to come up with $104 million of unemployment assistance. It was this assistance, Mr. Speaker, that kept the Bahamian economy afloat. $104 million injected directly into the system. This assistance saved us all, Mr. Speaker, whether we want to admit it or not. These funds generated on demand and propelled economic activities throughout the length and breadth of this nation, keeping people employed, putting food on the table, and turning our economic engine. Mr. Speaker, I remember what happened after Dorian and the pressure that was placed on NIB. In the aftermath of that hurricane, the National Insurance Board was called upon to share its data with the Ministry of Education and the Office of the Registrar General to aid in the identification of individuals from affected areas who had lost all of their important documents. NIB came through at the time. To assist the Bahamians in the Dorian disaster area, the government asked NIB to implement the Dorian Unemployment Benefit Extension Program, which the government funded. Again, NIB came through. The fallout of COVID-19 laid over 40,000 unemployment benefit applications on NIB's doorstep. Think about that. 40,000 persons over a very short period became unemployed, and NIB had to make that adjustment. Usually, in a year, NIB paid out 7,000 unemployment to 7,000 applicants for unemployment. And think of the trajectory of moving from 7,000 per year to 40,000 in 1 month. When the tourism sector shut down, the government quickly looked to NIB to implement an unemployment benefit program for self-employed persons. In fact, the government gave us less than 2 weeks to get it done. NIB did it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we charged NIB with implementing a government-funded program to extend unemployment benefits for persons who NIB's benefit had ended and were still unemployed. Speaker, I remember clearly when we were asked how much time we had. Prime Minister said, yesterday. Of course, Mr. Speaker, NIB did its work. So I want to remind the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker, of the importance of the National Insurance Board. And again, I say it works for you when you cannot work for yourself. Bahamians everywhere should see the value of this Bahamian standout board, something of which we can all be proud, and we must always also remember that NIB can only pay us when we have contributed to the fund. And so I ask, Mr. Speaker, I ask employees, where would you be if you did not have NIB to pay your unemployment benefit, your sickness and retirement benefits? I ask employers, Mr. Speaker, where would you be if NIB wasn't able to pay employees so that they could use that money to generate the demand and your business could stay open in the wake of a major disaster? We all need NIB, Mr. Speaker. Employees and self-employed persons must pay their contributions, and employers must pay their portion of the contributions and ensure that their employees' contributions are reported to NIB and the funds are turned over to NIB. For our country to survive these hard times, Mr. Speaker, NIB must survive. And each of us must do our part to make sure this happens. I finally urge employers and employees to pay your contributions, to turn in your employees' contributions. Mr. Speaker, I started to say, look at what NIB had to do during this period. And as a snapshot, Mr. Speaker, I just say to you this much. For the period August 25th, 2019 to February 2021, NIB has dispersed to the Bahamian people $242.6 million. $242.6 million injected into this economy. $250 million, yes. $250 million. As injected in this economy. That amount of money keeps the Bahamas afloat. Just to give you a slight breakdown, Mr. Speaker, the unemployment benefit for Dorian survivors and the government assistance for government for the Dorian Extension Program, $15.1 million was paid out to about 4,700 persons. During this period, Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas funded unemployment assistance program for self-employed persons, $15.6 million for 7,242 persons. Mr. Speaker, this is what I say was remarkable. Here is a government of the Bahamas caring for its people, persons who are primarily self-employed, who did not pay NIB, with jet ski operators, air bridge, ordinary Bahamians, 7,000 plus of them. Government decided to pump in almost $16 million. And yet, Mr. Speaker, scores of Bahamians are saying, well, I didn't get any. But the government ain't doing that. But these were individuals who the government determined, I'm gonna have to give you something to keep you afloat. Hotels are closed. You did not contribute, but you're working and you got a family. So we're gonna pump $15 million into that section of our economy. And then, Mr. Speaker, government determined that they want to further help the Bahamian people. When they had exhausted those persons who were working, they exhausted their unemployment benefit with NIB, or 13 weeks of unemployment benefit that was given to them by NIB. Hotels remained closed, so the government determined that nearly 34,000 Bahamians, we'd give you an extension of your unemployment benefit. And we've been paying that benefit, Mr. Speaker, from September of last year. From September of last year, Mr. Speaker, the government has been paying 33,000 individuals, over 33,000. $200 a week, subsequently $150 a week, then $100 a week. And so of the government fund, nearly $100 million, Mr. Speaker, was spent on unemployment, the extension of unemployment assistance. And put that in order, Mr. Speaker. Think about it. And I'll just use the jet ski operator as an example. The jet ski operator, you work on Cable Beach. The tourism industry shut down. You don't have a red cent left. You have no savings. So the government kick in and say, okay, I know what your problem is. We want to keep the economy afloat. So we create this program for you. Or if you're a hotel worker, hotels shut down in August, you go to NIB and you get 13 weeks of unemployment assistance from NIB. And the government then takes the position that the hotels are still closed. We must continue the program. And so nearly $100 million have been spent on that program. And that's only the extension of NIB, Mr. Speaker. That's after they would have got their 13 weeks. Government has expended nearly $100 million. And Mr. Speaker, I get calls every day. I get tons of calls every day from ordinary Bahamians who say, well, the process is taking too long. I ain't get my $200 or $100. My recent calls have been, why NIB only giving me $60? And Mr. Speaker, to say what one young person said to me, who works in the hotel, he said, Mr. Roll, let me tell you, I've been off since March. I got unemployment assistance from NIB because I was paying it when I was working. The government graciously determined after my 13 weeks with NIB that they're going to give me $200 a week, and I got that. And then they reduced it to $100 a week, and I got that. And I just want to say to you, thank you. Because $100 a week went a long way. It went a long way because I was not working. And I was the only person in my house that was working. Never mind the noise in the market, he said, those individuals who are complaining and who were saying the government wasn't doing anything. I fully appreciate every single thing that the government is doing. And he said to me, I have to remind my colleagues that we depend on tourism. Then I go to the waterfront, look out every day and don't see a ship. I walk Bay Street. You don't see a ship tied up to the door. I know I get tied down many times, but I won't say that.
You say shit.
No, I don't spell it. They don't see a ship tied at the door. And so, Mr. Speaker, he reminded me that walking on Bay Street and almost every single business is closed. But he was getting, at the time, $100 every week from NIB. Mr. Speaker, that is a reflection of the government's commitment. The government's commitment to the people of the Bahamas and how work is done. Mr. Speaker, I know that we have to look differently at how we do things. I know, Mr. Speaker, that we have to now provide better services to the Bahamian people. I also know, Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, that NIB is going to be a critical organization as we move forward in this, our Bahama land. Mr. Speaker, you are aware that during the pandemic, we opened a facility at the Sports Center. And this facility allowed Bahamians, instead of being crammed in one building, to work and operate from an area where they could social distance. Yes, there were days when the lines were long. Yes, we did not get it right every single day. But Mr. Speaker, this was a new time. We had learned our lessons. And so today, Mr. Speaker, as we continue to do those things, as we continue, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that people get their checks, that the individuals are paid, we, as a collective body, must be thankful to God that NIB has been around. Mr. Speaker, one of the critical things that NIB introduced during this pandemic was the launch of our self-service portal, where businesses, companies can register at NIB and pay, make their contributions without standing online, without coming to the building. Just pay online so that we would reduce the number of hours people have to stay online to make payments. Imagine being able to, as a businessman, and Sanan's noticed, he could stay in his office and pay NIB $100,000 every month and pay NIB $100 every month. You are the best businessman on that side. So, and Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the fact that he has the ability now to pay online, every single employee also has the ability to stay in their offices or their homes, to get a PIN from NIB, and to look to see whether their contributions were paid to NIB. This is a remarkable step forward, Mr. Speaker. We're going to be promoting that more, Mr. Speaker, because I always hear the cry, Mr. Speaker, that I was working for Company A. So the owner of the company was making my deduction, but there's no evidence. Yes, there was no evidence that they paid the monies that they deducted from me to NIB. That is no longer an issue, Mr. Speaker. Individuals can today go to NIB website, get a PIN number, and trace their payments to see how much monies have been paid on their behalf to NIB. Mr. Speaker, NIB provides a long-term benefit over to 40,000 individuals, approximately $22,000 a month for pension and disability. It's a big margin that every month, $22,000 paid to Bahamians. And individuals say, well, that's their money. Yes, it is. But it speaks to the vision and the visionary position taken by the government to create the NIB board. And we must continue and build on that vision. So, Mr. Speaker, as you know, because of COVID-19, and to extend the verification process. I am pleased to announce that verifications at NIB should be as follows. 1st of July 2021, all persons aged 60 and over should verify. At the end of this month, March, all persons under the age of 60 who live in the Bahamas and receipt of a survivor's benefit and or any assistance should verify. Verification is critical, Mr. Speaker. I believe you can. I will confirm whether or not we could do it online, but traditionally it's been, I get to see you in person. We got to confirm that you are who you say you are, and we move forward. But Mr. Speaker, I was saying verification is critical, Mr. Speaker, because we want to make sure that we are paying monies to the right person. And we want to make sure that the persons are alive and deserve the benefit that they are getting. Mr. Speaker, we say that you can verify by simply talking to your pastor or your priest or a senior government official who have the ability to do it, a lawyer, a magistrate, a medical doctor who is licensed in the Bahamas, or a justice of the peace. So those are the options you have. All you have to do is get the document, speak to your lawyer, your priest, your pastor, the senior government official at JP, and get the documents verified. You shouldn't pay a fee to the church. Mr. Speaker, it is critical, Mr. Speaker, for us to continue to progress. And earlier I talked about the National Prescription Drug Plan, Mr. Speaker. The National Prescription Drug Plan is one of the several initiatives created by, formed by, and led by the former Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, just 10 years ago, we started this program. And today, 35,555 Bahamians benefit from this program. And approximately $17.1 million a year is spent on this program. Again, an act that is visionary. Steps that are necessary for the growth and development of the Bahamian people. 35,000 Bahamians benefit from this program daily. Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the 22nd of February of this year, it was with great pleasure that the National Security Building was named the Sir Orville Turnquist Building in recognition of Sir Orville's dedication to nation building. Sir Orville served as Deputy Prime Minister and the 5th Governor General of the Commonwealth of Bahamas. The Orville A. Turnquist National Security Building is a structure of national importance, serving as the office for the Minister of National Security and the headquarters of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and the Royal Bahamas Police Force. As the Minister for the Public Service and the National Insurance Board, I'm proud to state that we have completed a building that we can be all proud of, with the latest in technology that incorporates geothermal energy efficiency and equipped with a modern communication system that connects multiple national security agencies, the police, defense force, and the prison department. The compound also houses an annex building comprising of living quarters for male and female Royal Bahamas Defense Force officers, the gym, the guardhouse, and other things for traffic and security of the building. This occasion would not have been possible without the important investment of NIB. And Mr. Speaker, I can announce that very shortly, 2 other buildings will be commissioned in the names of Bahamians who have contributed significantly to the growth and development of the Bahamian people. And so, very shortly, we will commission a building in Bimini, the government complex that will house multiple government agencies, and a building in New Providence. We are keeping with every single protocol, Pine Ridge. We will do what is necessary. We are a government that is totally transparent. We don't stage things. We do the right thing. Mr. Speaker, recently there's been a changing of the guard at NIB. The director of NIB has moved on. And Mr. Moss, the new director, has taken office effective Monday past. I want to commend Ms. Virgil Roll for her commitment, her hard work and dedication, for keeping us focused, for keeping us doing the right thing on behalf of the Bahamian people. Going forward, Mr. Speaker, the National Insurance Board has approved many critical things that will provide opportunities and services for the Bahamian people. Right? We are, Mr. Speaker, we're in the process, Mr. Speaker, of building an exceptional customer experience. We're developing talented and motivating our staff. We're ensuring that the health of the National Insurance Fund continues for generations to come. We continue to modernize, to add critical components to our own development. We need to improve customer service, and we're working on it. I hear the complaints about our telephone system, and we will and have sought to address them. We are launching a C10 Easy app that will allow employers with 5 or less employees to easily submit contribution records and pay contributions from a mobile app. We are working on strengthening our collaboration between NIB and other government agencies. We are, Mr. Speaker, making NIB a better place to be. Mr. Speaker, our last challenge at NIB is to ensure that we government of the Bahamas and NIB, produce a new NIB card. This is critical, Mr. Speaker. As you know now, what exists is that we give a card to individuals who are employed. Give a photograph card. What we like to do, Mr. Speaker, and what we have permission to do from the Cabinet of the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, is to issue a card from birth so that we could trace you and follow you from the time you're born in the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, using one identification number and one card. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the NIB card is widespread. Use in the Bahamas is widespread. We know that if you don't get in school, you need a card. If you don't cash a check, you need an NIB card. So what we propose to do, Mr. Speaker, is to have a card for anyone that is born in the Bahamas. You get a card with a unique identifier on your card, a unique number. And Mr. Speaker, what the card will say is that you're born in the Bahamas. But we can determine that you're a Bahamian, your status will be Bahamian. If at the time of your birth, we cannot determine that you are whether you're a Bahamian or not, we will just indicate that your status is unknown. No, absolutely no. No, let me repeat that. Let me repeat that. We collaboration is ongoing with the Department of Immigration, and we will not do and cannot do anything that usurps the power and authority of immigration. And so, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Stanan.
I just want to make sure the honorable member, I heard what he said. He said they will determine, meaning NIB, whether that person is Bahamian. That's what I heard. That is not a role for immigration, because just because you're born here, NIB, you're not Bahamian. We have an Immigration Act in draft form circulating that will deal with that issue. But I think immigration should be careful on making pronouncements on NIB, or who is a Bahamian. You can say he was born here, but not who's Bahamian.
Maybe I used the wrong word and the wrong terminology. NIB will never be in a position to determine who is a Bahamian or not. When I said if we could determine, I mean that if the parents, the producers with a passport, is that say they are Bahamian, we know the roles that immigration will play. We know the role that other agencies will play. We will not get in the business and will never be in the business of determining who is a citizen of the Bahamas. But we know if your daddy is a Bahamian and your mother is a Bahamian, you're still not Bahamian up to a certain level. Up to a certain level. And no, let me go further. Let me go further. That is why I said that there is collaboration, and collaboration is ongoing with immigration, so that NIB will not get into, we will not get into determining who is a Bahamian. That's not our business.
Honorable member, the member for Golden Isles on the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, beg for the good member to give a clarification when he said there's a different level of Bahamian. Please clarify that. No. I want clarification, and please. Please. If he doesn't,
Again, Mr. Speaker, I didn't anticipate that this would be so controversial, but you know that's the nature of this arena, and certainly the member knows that I, as a solid member from Exuma, born and bred here, generations beyond, know that there's only one group of Bahamians, only one Bahamian, and Bahamian, the word Bahamian and who is Bahamian is determined by the laws of the Bahamas. And the point I was seeking to make was that NIB is not working alone. We've been directed to work with immigration to make sure that what we do is not in conflict with any rules or any regulations. We have been committed to work with other government agencies to make sure that what we do, again, are in compliance with the laws of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
You only want one Bahamas. One Bahamas. You only had a prime minister.
Mr. Speaker.
One Bahamas.
Mr. Speaker. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, but before I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I may have also misspoke, Mr. Speaker, when I may have led to the conclusion that all of these agencies, a final decision has been determined. And I just want to take the position, Mr. Speaker, and advise the public that all of the decisions about various classes of individuals in the service who are on temporary positions or on contract in the government agencies, they are matters that are under consideration, and some of them have not yet been finalized. So I just want to make sure that I did not misspeak, and also want to ensure that individuals know what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I had the honor to serve the people of the Bahamas for over 30 years as a public officer. I started my young teaching career, compelled to attend, no. I was compelled, Mr. Speaker, to attend the Bahamas Teachers College, compelled because that is something that I didn't want to do, but my parents determined that that is what I was going to do. And after completing my teaching certificate, I was posted in Forbesville, Exuma. That was my first teaching post. While in Forbesville, I met many young people, distinguished Bahamians, and I don't want to single out. I met my good friend, who's the MP for Exuma now, and I cherish that relationship. And and so, Mr. Speaker, and so, Mr. Speaker, I am honored to have served. I'm honored to have had an opportunity as an educator. Distinguished service. Mr. Speaker, I also had an opportunity to speak, to serve in school at Georgetown, served in the school at Black Point in Exuma, my hometown, and Bearing Point in Andros. And then, Mr. Speaker, I was transferred to New Providence, where I spent 22 years in C.I. Gibson. While at C.I. Gibson, Mr. Speaker, I had an opportunity to meet some of the most remarkable persons in my life. You will hear me from time to time when I speak in this place talk about the encounter that I had with the MP for Camp Road at the time, the distinguished Governor General whose daughter sit in this place. And was always pleased when he visited C.I. Gibson School, where when he visited C.I. Gibson School and sought to wipe the tears from the eyes of every single Bahamian. While at C.I. Gibson, I had the honor of meeting some distinguished young Bahamians, and I tell people I'm so proud of many of them. Two of them previously served under the PLP. I had the opportunity to teach Ron Pender and Yvette Turnquest, former members of Parliament. My only disappointment, Mr. Speaker, so far, and I had to work on this, Mr. Speaker, is to find a student of mine that could come on this side. Seems like all of them going on that side.
Huh?
No. I left Exuma when Dawn went to school. I was an android. Yes. I had a distinguished career as a public officer, Mr. Speaker, and I'm satisfied that I've done my duty, Mr. Speaker. In 1993, I was called by the former Prime Minister to serve as Deputy Controller of Road Traffic and given the task to introduce year-round licensing, because at the time, every single vehicle expired in March. And 200,000 individuals came to road traffic in the month of March. And we took the carefully considered decision to spread out licensing to your birth month. Then, following that, Mr. Speaker, I had the great opportunity to lead in the introduction of photo licenses for Bahamians and to get rid of the paper license that exists. Computerization of the department. And was subsequently, Mr. Speaker, after all of that, transferred to the Ministry of Public Works in the Department of Physical Planning. 2006, Mr. Speaker, I was graciously invited to offer as a candidate for the Garden Hills constituency. 2007, won the election and was appointed the government whip, as well as the PALSEC in the Ministry of Housing, where we built more houses than any group of leaders in housing, sold more service lots than could be imagined. Only the Prime Minister's new plan, where he given 2 subdivisions to only local professionals, would surpass that, Mr. Speaker. My work is almost done, Mr. Speaker. I'm just saying, Mr. Speaker, I'm not being pushed out like my friend Picewell. I just want to make that point. I'm not pushed out, Mr. Speaker. I made the determination that I would not seek re-election, Mr. Speaker, and I would serve until the Prime Minister calls the election, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank, Mr. Speaker, eternally thank the good people of the Garden Hills constituency, Mr. Speaker. I hold myself. I want to thank the good people of the Garden Hills constituency for their continued and unflinching support, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
I want to thank my colleagues for their support, the work they have done, and how they have cleared the path for me to walk, Mr. Speaker. I want to, in a real way, Mr. Speaker, say to my friends, God has been gracious to me.
Amen. One more time. Yeah, man.
I could go fishing any day.
Yeah. I'm just speak it.
Yeah, she's been along longer than me. The Speaker, I could not have done this work if it was not for the good people in the Ministry of Public Service. The good people in the Ministry of the Public Service who continues to work hard, continues to do the work under the leadership of, I always say, the best permanent secretary in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The Prime Minister, the Prime Minister said I discriminating, and I take this opportunity to clearly discriminate. I know if she wanted to be your Secretary of the Cabinet, you would have selected a Prime Minister. She's that good. But her team, as she says, she leads the team, and she ensures that the policies by the government are carried out. He assures that I follow the protocols. He provides the leadership that is necessary for good public service. And so I thank all public officers. The Speaker, the good people of Exuma has been extraordinarily good to me. DPM said I could go fishing. He knows that that is what I do all the time. Yeah.
Come on,
And so I say to the wonderful people of my home, I thank you for your opportunity. And I thank you for all you have done and how you have defended me and ensured that I carried out all of the work successfully. I thank the members of the National Insurance Board who continue to work, continue to develop, and continue to provide service for the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, my family has been my rock, my support. And as we continue to rock the dock, as we continue to move the country forward, I want to thank my wife Cynthia and my children for their unflinching, unwavering support. They've kept me focused. They've kept my anchor. They've been my anchor. They know that I'm committed to serve. And since we don't know when the bell is going to ring, and since I heard the Prime Minister threatening to ring the bell, I don't know. I just will make sure that I get on the record to thank the individuals who have paved the way for me. Mr. Speaker, I'm so honored to serve. I'm so honored, Mr. Speaker, that I was given the opportunity to serve. And so I ask the members from the Garden Hills constituency to support the new candidate when elections called, Mr. Stephen Greenslade. I endorse his candidacy, and I look forward to working with him. And so, Mr. Speaker, unlike my good friend from South Andros, unlike my good friend from South Andros, I just say to the Bahamian people that I took that decision, spoke to my leader, spoke to my colleagues, and that's how it's done, Mr. Speaker. And so, my good cousin from Saudi Lutra, whenever the bell rings, my journey would be done. And I congratulate Mr. Speaker and thank Prime Minister Minnis, the most honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, for giving me this opportunity to serve. I thank my former Prime Minister Ingram for pulling me up and giving me an opportunity to highlight my career. And I also remember my constituency association. I remember when I was told to consider Garden Hills, I was told to go and speak with Ms. Claretta Duncombe, who's now an MCM. And I didn't know the results of a talk. What I do know was she came back to me shortly after that and said, "You are our candidate." Whatever you did, Claretta, however you spoke to the Prime Minister, whatever you convinced him of, I want to thank you. Who did I?
Nobody.
There was another candidate. I'm not going to call his name today. What I want to say to Claretta is thank you. And so, Bahamians everywhere, I leave with you the words and the options of a good man. We all should be about trying to wipe the tears from the eyes of every single baby. And Angliston, I hope that you will continue that course. Now, I don't know if your leader is committed as you are. But I started my comments today by saying that I could not imagine in this Bahama land that the daughters of Cylinder, and our Governor General. I just call him Sir Arthur, but he didn't take those trappings. He didn't want to be labeled in those trappings. That the daughter of Sir Arthur would not be guaranteed a seat, a nomination. Oh.
Was that true? Say now. Say now, it is not true. Say now.
No, I don't want y'all to put it. I don't want you all to put that kind of pressure on the deputy. I don't know if y'all can put that kind of pressure on the deputy. I don't know if we could put that much pressure on the deputy because I don't want y'all to put that pressure on Exuma because he's trying to survive himself. I want him to keep his head down. I want to.
They said go to the bottom.
Well, I listen. That may be the problem. You see, you got to look at it. You got his back, and the leader a little scared of that fellow from West End because he know if you, West End, and him get together, that's a different thing. So that's the dilemma he is in. That's the conundrum he faced.
What's the conclusion?
The conclusion is very clear. The conclusion is very clear, and it was just announced by a senior member. All we have to do is support and be strong with the F&M candidate in Cat Island, and that solve all of the problems. All of the problems. And so, Mr. Speaker, I engaged today on the matters affecting the public service and national insurance. I just spoke lightly about some of the political things that could happen. And I thank Prime Minister and colleagues, Bahamians everywhere, for the work, the support that I've gotten from them, and look forward to continue working with them until the work is done. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Long Island.
Speaker, thank you. Speaker, I am deeply honored and privileged to rise on behalf of my people, the hard-working, domitable people of Long Island. Speaker, I wish to begin by paying my respect to Ms. Ruth Watkins, who passed recently. I give my sympathies to her daughter, Ms. Winifred Pinky Curry, to Ms. Maria Burrows, her other daughter, her son Vaughn, and the entire family. I want them to have my deepest sympathies. Unfortunately, due to a scheduling clash this weekend, I'm unable to be there for the funeral this Saturday. However, I will be there at some point, and I will be sending a wreath and a card with my good friend Keith Carroll to the family. I'd also like to extend my condolences to the family of Mr. Danny Burrows, who passed recently. Mr. Speaker, I had the best childhood ever. Yes, we had our challenges. We did not grow up with a silver or gold or platinum spoon, but we lived well, ate well, and had love and family. I vividly recall studying in primary school with a lamp and lantern. I recall the old fire hearth and mommy and granddaddy, who I am still fortunate to have in this world with me today, baking banana bread, or potato bread, or cassava bread. I remember going to crab, going striking on the north side. I remember standing over the banana hole and holding the basket whilst my grandfather, Bishop Edward Gibson, braved the walls and climbed in and out that hole, tending to his banana trees and bringing up bunches of bananas. I know about outside toilets. I know about gasoline or diesel generators. I remember how my late uncle interconnected drop cords thousands of feet through bushes from the generator at the house where he stayed to another house where we may have stayed, or we were staying. Many islanders had similar experiences. I vividly remember the first time that DVL hooked us up. We did not have to worry about the kerosene or generator turning off at a certain time anymore. This came during the first Ingram administration. I remember having to take the news every day because every Friday I had a principal, teacher, principal and my teacher, Mr. Christopher Ramming, now one of the members of the Ramming Brothers Gospel Group. He would take us out of the tree at the Sims Dock, and we had to report the news of the week. We got a grade for that too. I remember one week, I learned from that week, my Grammy took the news for me, and I didn't transcribe it into my handwriting. I got a whipping for that. I even remember that sometime in 1998, 1999, as a grade 10 or 11 student, there was a town hall meeting at the Sims Primary School. And my grandpa took me to the town hall. I approached the then MP, Mr. Jimmy Knowles, with a letter asking for telephone wires and poles to be put in our settlement. I also told him that I intended to send it to the papers. And so he was very generous with me. He listened and told me not to worry. 2 weeks later, the lines were being run. In 1998, 1999, for the first time, house phone came to our settlement. The Honorable Jimmy Knowles kept in touch. When I graduated high school, he gave me a check and bought my books for the first semester of college. I'll never forget that. Life is interesting. I am honored to have succeeded him and now also become an MP. I've said all of the above about my experience in the island as a boy because I wondered if others had similar experiences growing up on the islands. But a familiar voice affirmed that he too had those experiences. That voice was Picewell, hometown boy, Soper Forbes, the senior man, the member for South Andres and Mangrove Key. As a boy, every night, I was glued to 1540 and listening to Speak Up. I did all my chores and often had a listen from a battery-operated radio. This show ran from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., and he informed, made jokes, talked about potato bread and hominy and the old iron pot and all kinds of topics we could relate to. I don't think I ever missed a show. In fact, Speak Up was the first talk show in the Bahamas. This was one of the initial shows for public participation that aired when the airwaves were being opened. Whenever we had regatta or special event, the biggest celebrity to come to town, Picewell Forbes. So for years, I wanted to meet him. And I did so in passing prior to coming to this place. However, I got to know him when I came here. Anytime I experienced a political attack or some issue, he would always send me a text with some reassuring words. Every time, throughout my tenure here. Just 2 weeks ago, he sent me a WhatsApp that said, "Morning, Chairman. Stay focused, my brother. You be okay. Respect, bro. Thanks for your support and consideration in constituency development, sir." I've always appreciated those encouraging words, those kind gestures. And so it saddened me when I heard his speech in this place on Monday. He's always told me that the next term would be his last. But when I heard that speech, I could tell that he was being forced out, that he was dealt a bad hand. Notwithstanding South Andres and Mangrove Key, his speech, I hope,
that the Honorable past is explored. Ask him to reconsider. Invite him back. Disrespect and discard a long-standing, long-suffering, and loyal soldier like that simply flabbergasted. Speaker, Carl Andrews expressed the wish to be able to turn on water in his constituency in his speech on Monday. And I can assure the member that in another 3 weeks or so, we will be turning on water in South Andrews and Mangrove. And he will be present to see his wish come true. Mr. Speaker, let me say at the outset that I support this midterm budget. It's been undoubtedly a rough year. However, notwithstanding the economic challenges recently brought on by COVID-19 and other happenings before, we have seen a steady hand at the tiller. Yes, lockdowns can be frustrating. Yes, curfews can be frustrating, but we must look at why they were needed, why they are needed. We must look at how these very same measures are being employed in countries across the globe. Speaker, we're making really good progress in Long Island. Yes, we have a ways to go, but we are making headway. And I often tell my good friend, the member for Yamacraw, that this election, whomever is sent, will be like a lion and a gazelle in the Serengeti. We know which one is the lion. On Tuesday, architect Gus Ferguson of Ferguson and Associates delivered the finalized architectural rendering of the new Long Island International Airport to me. These renderings are being presented to the local town planning committee. I'll be making a special delivery on Monday. Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely pleased by this. This airport represents the future of Long Island. This is the bounce that Long Island needs. The airport will be the catalyst that causes Long Island to evolve from a sleepy island left behind due to a lack of infrastructure and development to becoming a beacon in the archipelagic chain. And so watch out, Abaco. Watch out, Eleuthera. Watch out, Exuma. Long Island is on its way. Long Islanders have been awaiting this airport with bated breath. All of my life, I have been waiting. So many have passed on and only dreamed of this day. And I was happy to hear the commitment of the member for Freetown when he announced recently that construction would begin in the second quarter. And I also want to thank the member for Kalani, of course, the member for Michael, for their efforts in seeing this dream come to fruition. I was told today by Director Cargill that next week, tenders are being issued for the terminal building for the new Long Island International Airport. I was also told that in about another 2 weeks, tenders will be issued for the new runway for the Long Island International Airport. I'm excited, Mr. Speaker. While I purchased 3 fire bowsers or water trailers from the constituency fund some time ago, I'm pleased to note that with an airport, fire engines will also come. This is a major plus for the people of Long Island. Mr. Speaker, I have made major headway with the expansion of the water network in Long Island. Only a handful of people had water on the island. Just a handful, a few settlements. By the time we are done, we would have provided water to hundreds of households and between 1,500 and 1,800 residents. Infrastructural development spurs investment. Some years ago, I was looking at a piece of property in Exuma. The seller wanted $5,000. I was gung-ho about it. And though I had a sweet deal, when I read the fine print and discovered that there was no water, no light, no phone, zero, I walked away from the deal. Imagine how many investors look at islands such as Long Island and whilst having an initial interest in investing, upon realizing that basic infrastructure is not present, they lose interest. That is why my thrust has been to put water infrastructure in my constituency and all of the family islands. The islands represent the future of the Bahamas. So, Mr. Speaker, we've completed the installation of water mains from Lochabar to Salt Pond, 96,914 feet, phase 1. Currently, 2 deep wells are being drilled. The third has already been drilled for RO supply. A new RO plant is being installed, and a new 250,000-gallon storage tank is being erected. We expect to turn on water in 2 to 3 months, Prime Minister. We've also completed the installation of water mains from Windsor to Millerton, 67,633 feet. Currently, that plant is being upgraded to service the new customers. 6 new 5,000-gallon tanks have been erected, and we expect to turn on water there in that area, phase 2, in 2 to 3 months as well. Speaker, over the years, we've also completed service lateral change-out in Long Island, which is a part of an aggressive non-revenue water program to prevent leaks. We've changed out 700 service laterals in Deadman Ski. We've completed the installation of a new distribution system in Woodhill, inclusive of a 5,000-gallon holding tank and pumping station. We've completed the installation of a new distribution system to service customers in Scrub Hill with some 4,200 feet of 4-inch PVC pipeline. We've completed the installation of 3 community booster stations in the Deadman Ski water distribution system area to increase pressures and provide added service levels at higher elevations. We've continued the installation of pipes on numerous side streets throughout the service areas of Long Island. And we've procured a new modern water tanker. While I remain committed to Long Island, and in my capacity as Executive Chairman of the Water and Sewage Corporation, I have also been keen to ensure that all islands are adequately serviced based on the needs of the day. I will speak more to that later in this presentation. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to note that we are undergoing infrastructural upgrades on Long Island. I want to thank the member for Carmichael for all he's done to assist me with Long Island's development. I thank him for his support. He's been a source of unyielding support in the progress and development of Long Island. I am pleased to note that we recently commissioned the newly paved roadway and redeveloped site at the Columbus Monument. I hope that artisans, artists, and local entrepreneurs can take advantage of the economic opportunities that this will create. I will also be seeking to put streetlights along that roadway. We also commissioned the new Newton Key Bridge. That is a beautiful site. It serves as a tourism highlight, an ecological delight, and a place that will undoubtedly bring the community together. Just recently, we saw the leader of the opposition touring our works. Lately, the road works have commenced on Long Island, beginning in the north. This is phase 1. It takes into account Seymour's and Clinton's, Point Ground, Stellamar's, Bunches, Sims, McCann's, and also include the installation of guardrails, road signs. Yes, I know that we are in desperate need of major road rehabilitation and paving work, from Seymour's to Clarence Town. The roads in the Deep South remain in fantastic condition. The reality is that Long Island has not had any work to the main Queens Highway since Basil Lemore paved the road in the early 1990s. This is why several islands have been paved 2 or 3 times since that time. Our roads are very long. The member for Carmichael has assured me that the roads will be attended to until all of the concerns are addressed. I've also requested the scarifying and paving of key heavily trafficked side roads, roads such as O'Neill's and Hogan's Road and Arden's Road, Mangrove Bush Road, etc. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the people of Long Island that I've communicated their concerns about drainage and culverts in certain areas. One of my generals, Maurice Minnis, is unable to move into his house in Hamilton after spending thousands over the years due to severe flooding and drainage issues there. I've also discussed the construction of parks and open spaces in North, Central, and South Long Island, with the member for Carmichael. And so to the people, or to persons such as my old teacher, Mr. Endel Adderley, who constantly asks me about this, I'm certain that our pleas will not fall on deaf ears. Mr. Speaker, over the weekend we distributed hundreds of backyard farming kits. Extend a special thanks to the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources. I also thank the Minister and his ministry for carrying out repairs to the packing house in Clarence Town. The revamp of the packing house will bode well with the resurgence of farming on the island. It's supplemented by nearly 1.8 million seeds that I distributed to islanders last year, courtesy of the Constituency Fund. I've been in talks with Managing Director of the Bahamas Development Bank, Mr. Dave Smith. I'm pleased to advise that we are collaborating to actively expand in the Long Island Small Ruminant Project. The BDB is seeking to set up a slaughterhouse and agricultural school in Long Island. I'm very excited about that. Without doubt, fishermen like my friend Keith Knowles, Scott Harding, and others are ecstatic about the new fisheries legislation. Fishermen believe that the implementation of this legislation will better protect the industry for Bahamians and curb unregulated illegal poaching. Mr. Speaker, I am ecstatic about the reopening of road traffic on Long Island. Not only has the office in Hamilton been reopened, but a new permanent office has been opened in Deals, Long Island. The office in Deals, that is in the north, is keeping with a campaign promise that the Prime Minister and I made to open a permanent office in that area, thereby causing residents to not have to drive from one end of the island to the next for service. We have delivered on that promise. These offices are now able to print driver's licenses and decals, issue new plates, etc. And more than 6 Long Islanders have been hired and trained to operate those offices. Let me rephrase that. 6 Long Islanders, 6 have been hired and trained to operate both offices. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to inform my constituents that I have been in discussions with the member for North Abaco. And he's assured me that the new passport office in Long Island will be open in 2 to 3 weeks. I look forward to this, as it would alleviate the burden of travel and expenses, hotel, rental car, food, etc. that many Long Islanders incur having to travel to New Providence to obtain or renew passports. Mr. Speaker, we are overdue a major rehab of our medical facilities. With development and a new airport, our main clinics in Sims and Deadmansky desperately need upgrading. The clinics are, in some areas, falling to pieces and haven't been upgraded in decades. We also need a lab. Why should Long Islanders have to come to New Providence just for a blood test or a urine test? Given the length of our island, we desperately need 2 ambulances. At present, we have none. Given the length of Long Island and the distance between the 2 main clinics, it only makes sense that both facilities have ambulances. For far too long, Long Islanders have had to suffer the indignity of being carried in the back of trucks after accidents or illnesses, sometimes in the hot sun. I remember this all too well, given the experience of my late uncle, Aaron, who spent his last moments being transported to the clinic in the back, in the bed of a truck. Our infrastructural development must go hand in hand, in tandem with improvements to our medical facilities. Speaker, if I'm not mistaken, I heard the member for Mount Moriah state that Long Island would be receiving a new police chief. I welcome that. While I have other policing concerns, which I will meet with the member about in the coming days, I also note that there's been a lack of police presence in South Long Island since Hurricane Joaquin severely damaged the police station in Clarencetown. Clarencetown, which is the capital and home to the administrator's office, does not currently have a police station. And so given that, I hope that some consideration can be given to repairing either the former police station or utilizing the now closed Mortimer's Primary School as the new police station. The Mortimer School remains in pristine condition since its closure 2 years ago. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude part of my contribution here on Long Island, Mr. Speaker, youth sport and culture activities are nearly non-existent on Long Island. I look forward to meeting with the new minister, the member for Central Grand Bahama, to discuss the various outstanding issues. Mr. Speaker, Long Island is in desperate need of a commercial bank. Our island cannot be unbanked, and we are appealing to the Bank of the Bahamas to come to Long Island. Our population is larger than many of the markets now being serviced. Mr. Speaker, Long Island's budgetary allocation for local government has not been increased in years. And so we are hopeful that consideration will be given to increasing that allocation given inflation and the growth of the island. Mr. Speaker, we are in need of investment to provide jobs for young people, to encourage some to return to the island. And so frankly, a cruise port at Gorton or Seymour would do well for the island going forward. I remain hopeful that some consideration is given to make an island such as Long Island, if only for a month or two out of the year, a tax-free economic zone. This would spur growth and investment. So, Mr. Speaker, we are undertaking various small works from the constituency fund, donations to the impending construction of beach picnic tables, benches, to fish cleaning sheds, to cabanas, to various other small capital works. Mr. Speaker, I now turn my attention to the Water and Sewage Corporation. Let me again publicly thank the Most Honorable Prime Minister, the member for Kalani, for the singular honor to serve as the executive chairman of that organization. I also thank the member for Michael for his constant support and guidance. Mr. Speaker, when the history of the Water and Sewage Corporation is written, historians will perhaps record 2020 as the most challenging year in the history of the organization. The COVID-19 pandemic has tested the very fiber of the corporation as our dedicated and hardworking staff, both here in New Providence and in the Family Islands, worked continuously throughout the many lockdown periods and case spikes to ensure uninterrupted potable water supply and the collection, treatment, and disposal of wastewater. And so to them, I extend my public thanks and appreciation for their efforts. Mr. Speaker, sadly, the corporation family suffered the loss of staff members to the COVID-19 disease. And so on behalf of the grateful corporation, I extend my deepest condolences to their families. Mr. Speaker, we have been told many times that water is vital to life. This is exemplified in 2020 when experts, both home and abroad, stressed to all of us that one of the primary weapons to defeating COVID-19 was good hygiene and the availability of potable water. We have kept the water flowing despite terrible odds stacked against us. Notwithstanding that, our teams continue to assiduously work to upgrade and extend our potable water network throughout our beautiful Commonwealth. Mr. Speaker, WSC has had a challenging year financially. Notwithstanding that, the corporation continues to strive to live up to its mandate to the Bahamian people, largely undergirded by monies from CDB and the IDB for the various projects we've been undertaking. We have incurred monumental losses over the last year. That said, contrary to fake news on social media, WSC is not disconnected a single customer since March 2020. I encourage persons to come in and pay their bills, or at least put something on it. This is how the corporation pays staff, is able to execute repairs and capital works, etc. You can pay via our app, our website, or our various locations throughout the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, when I compare the figures year-to-date December 2019 to year-to-date December 2020, WSC incurred a 30% loss. That is $53,634,835.01 in 2019 versus $37,369,883.39 in 2020. This figure did not include payment of water bills by government agencies, and still we kept the water flowing. In February 2021, WSC collected 2.5 million versus 3.6 million in February 2020, which was pre-COVID. We were only dealing with the fallout from Dorian. And that comparison for the month of February also represents a 30% falloff. However, comparably, we saw a 342% increase in cash collection in Abaco, from $8,793.92 in February 2020 in the wake of Dorian to $38,909.04 in February 2021. That's an increase given the circumstances, but given that our average collections out of Abaco ranges somewhere around 300 or so thousand, that's a major fall off. Mr. Speaker, WSA has embarked upon various institutional reforms, from our burgeoning development of an orientation and training program that I refer to as WSC University, to the digitization of the entity and deployment of technology throughout the archipelago, to the rollout of a procurement portal for all vendors, and submission of bids and documents via that portal, to community involvement, and the corporation's progressive handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, to tariff reforms, etc. Mr. Speaker, as part of its continued master plan, the corporation has been implementing a new family island water supply development strategy, which was developed with support and funding of $250,000 from the Inter-American Development Bank. This study has been providing the basis for the countrywide water supply strategy for all of the islands and an updated approach to servicing the family islands. It also incorporates the principles of sustainability and climate change. Works for all islands are now being implemented in a well-planned 3, 5, and 10-year horizons. Plan to be put on the horizon. This study acknowledges that some 50 million would be needed to firmly execute such a strategy. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to break here because my colleagues have indicated we're going to go on the break.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, we are going to take our luncheon break at this point. When we come back, the member for Long Island, and they'll have his other 30 minutes at 3 p.m. So I do now move that the business of this House do suspend until 3 p.m. this evening.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 3 p.m. this afternoon. As many members who are in favor remain seated, those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.
All right.